Thanks very much. Ragazzi. We are continuing now what we did last time. I heard in the meantime, I don't know if I said this, something about this, the assignment. Something means I still don't know exactly how this works. But it will be relevant in a very activating way. So that you have to do something. And the entire unit here, this learning skills, business study skills, or whatever the name is a little bit about answering the question that had been put forward last time. Is there a textbook? There are some technicalities you have to know. I mentioned some of them, referencing internet search or whatsoever. But they are, to be honest, more or less not important. Meaning you can easily get them, you can get them from the internet. We will talk about this here and in the tutorials. But the really important thing is, and this is the textbook, what Socrates said, the philosopher, I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. And this is the aim of the game, this is what this exercise is about. You have to find your own way when it comes to these three elements I mentioned last time, learning, research, and thinking. There is no clear sequence. Of course, you have to learn first something, and then you start to think, and then you do the proper research, meaning you do empirical research, you do theoretical research, or whatsoever. But at the same time, you did already something, and you know already something, and you start from it. There are some very simple things. I could talk about that, although I didn't study it for a long time anymore. That is what's going on in the brain. And we should not overestimate the brain. Don't underestimate it either. But there are some brain functions that are relevant to listening, to understanding. And unfortunately, we never follow them. Because we have our own habits, we are doing our own things. But one of the things, a very fundamental one, you will get these slides at a later stage, again via Blackboard, which works again, that is interaction. Anything that has to do with research, with learning, with studying, is about interaction. And some things I will say you won't like, and I say them hesitant, but I say them because I do the same things, the same wrong things. Making a photo of slides. Forget it, because you forget where the photo is stored. You will only receive information by interaction. Now I could show you the crumbs of the brain and how it works and some statistics about it. There are three basic moments to this interaction. You do not really get the information, but you get some parts of it, you make notes, and you wait them to settle. So it's a very, very broad, basic understanding. You have to make sure that afterwards you sit down and make yourself understand what you are talking about. This is a long, tedious process. You will check things on the internet, in books. Books are actually very good still, much better than the internet. It says, well, something going on in the brain. But you will have to study. You will have to look what is going on there. The other thing is listening. Listening in a way that with a very short time distance, you understand, you get the information. It's more or less simultaneously. I say something and you immediately get this information. Kind of immediately, there's just a tiny, tiny break in between. The other thing is actually more interesting in some way, because it is as well very much deceiving. You know already what I'm going to say. This is the best way of learning. You know what I'm going to say anyway, so you still listen, and you get exactly the information I give you. The problem is, with this, you get the information you think I'm going to give you, meaning you get the information you have already, and say, yes, that's what he said, or that's what he says. In terms of the brain, it works. There is this process that we have an expectation of what is going to be said, how is it structured. Which makes, on the one hand, understanding possible. On the other hand, as I said, it is deceiving, because we have already this image, and we, in a way, cut information away, meaning that what we do not expect is not there in the brain. It's faded out. And we are always working with some kind of pictures. And this is exactly what I said. We are not immediately interacting with the reality, but we have pictures from somewhere. Even we may take these pictures ourselves as photos, and then say, look what we are not seeing. We will come through it, and you may get at some stages surprised what this actually means, and how much it is really dependent on very minute details. And of course we have to know something already to be aware of it's worthwhile to look at it. And this is this interaction, what I said, learning, studying, thinking, research. We do not research if we do not have a question. So again, what I said last time, the question is actually the crucial point and the crucial difficulty of any research, of any study is, do not take these questions and give the answer you know already. Be open and try to look for something that is hidden. This is exactly the entire thing about research, what I showed last time with the slogan, the quote from Einstein. Now, at the end of last sessions, I talked about the stanza in the Vatican with the 4 dimensions of poetry, of philosophy, of values, and of the sacrament. And I just returned to the sacrament. Now this is something as well you know from somewhere. You can see it if you have some information. The painting is very structured in terms of what we call in arts history disegno, which has very clear lines. And this was exactly what the church did. They had clear lines to the answer. They didn't want to have any thinking. We'll come back to this later. They wanted to have clear lines, and they felt in the position of we give the answer. I say now, use the casual term wallpaper. these 4 wall paintings, had been there simply because of their beauty, but as well they had been a kind of permanent self-confirmation and information. This is where we are, this is where we come from, and this is how we think and what we think. Poetry, values, philosophy, ancient philosophy, and this is where we go. Now you can say, okay, good old stuff, we have other wallpapers, or we don't have any wallpapers, we just have painted walls. Okay. At the same time, if you go through the city, if you leave the campus to whichever side, you see not wallpapers but street papers. You see exactly this kind of information on the streets. Shopping malls, if you go through any shopping mall, you have a huge amount of information there. And it is not only the information buy this product because it is good, but there is much more information included. There is the information of technology is good. Sometimes if you buy a jacket because it's a high-tech material that we use today. It is about information about not just this computer model or this mobile phone model, but it is about this is the standard we work with. We have many shops where I'm surprised that it's there, the sign free Wi-Fi. So this is a kind of permanent information on where we live. And although there is a little bit, or there is a large discussion about it, we have, in a way, 2 ways of development. We as individuals, we as person, as human being, we develop. I don't know if you remember. I remember it, but not from myself, but from my daughter, crawling on the ground and not being able to get on the feet. And then there is this exploration. It's all about learning and study. There's this exploration, how to get up on the 2 legs and walk, and how to open the door. It's all learning. It's what we always do. And although we see it immediately here, it's basically the same thing what we do if we do a research project on the price, constitution of the price in international markets. We have some information already, we put them together, we say this doesn't belong here, we may need some additional information. From where do we get it? Mama, can you help me? So that's the way. And of course we work always with these prejudices that are included, and we have to be careful about it. As I just said, Mama, can you help me? I did not say Papa can, because Papa was to be not there. Papa was working. Mama was at home and looking after me. Very basic things going permanently on, and we, in many cases, are not aware of them. And then we have this other learning here. Next year we have the year of the monkey, as far as I know, and that's where all this started. Well, it's not where all this started, but where we say these are our predecessors. And they could walk on 2 legs, but they usually didn't. They had been much better in climbing on trees. We very early unlearned this when we do it to children. But they could not fly. So there was some development happening. We lose something, at the same time we gain other things. All this is happening in a wide context of ourselves interacting with each other ourselves interacting with certain structures, with structures like the university, like the library, like the internet, and it is, and that's something we forget too often, it is, we are working, we are studying within a certain historical and natural environment. I don't know really enough about it. Probably most of you don't know enough about it. If you go to Changsha today, if you compare this with 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was a completely, supposedly completely different place. And you would see, not really, but kind of places like this, where you have built up areas today. Something we have to be aware of, and something where we have to think about as well when it comes to thinking about historical terms. All what we do is coined by immediate interaction, by the immediate interaction or setting within a natural framework or built up framework. And it is established, coined by the thinking that had been going on already. As I said last time, we are not doing much more than writing footnotes to Plato and doing something that is on the shores of giants. Now, I feel occasionally or frequently a little bit bad when I refer to what you may call Western culture or Western traditions. At the same time, there is, unfortunately, they say a good reason for it, because what happens today, and you can study this, you can do research on this if you are interested, I can give you literature on this. What we have today and what we usually call globalization is something that follows exactly these rules that have been coming from this tradition, down from the gods of Athens, if you want, and we will come back to this later, or very soon actually now, that have been established, usually we refer to it as capitalism, as capitalist system, as capitalist economy, around this time when Raffaello had been working on these frescoes. It's always deceiving as well to take a date and say, this is the date where we know this was a decisive date in coining history. Now there are certain dates, but there are usually time spans, and we usually or we frequently link something to names. Galileo Galileo, I mentioned him last time. He was then imprisoned in a nice prison near Florence, which was not a prison, he was under house arrest. But what happened was something where I tried to figure out if we are in a similar situation today. Just some catchwords. This is a painting by Peter Bruegel from 1562, but actually he refers to an event, if you want, over many years, called Black Death in 1350s. Black Death meant that many people had been killed by something you may call natural event, by something that was not under control, and where this was not only a sad story about the people who did not survive, who were suffering from this disease, but it had been as well something that changed the entire society. Black Death was something nobody could escape. HIV AIDS is not a black death, but it's as well something nobody can escape. There are today diseases, new diseases, they are just traveling along, and in one way or another, nobody can escape. There had been some. Changsha was writing a beautiful book on this, with some love stories, escaping this and isolating themselves. But if we live in this world, there is something spreading, and positive and negative, we cannot simply escape. As I said, we are talking not about 1 year or a couple of years, but we are talking about a span of time, a period. Now I come to at least 2 items that are of immediate relevance when we are talking about economics and you are talking about finance. The first is finance. And here comes one thing, a warning. I knew the first bank had been established in these years. So I wanted to get some image. I looked on the internet, first bank, and this showed up. This has nothing to do with the first bank I was thinking about. Meaning, if you look for something on the internet, you have to be aware of what you are looking for, asking the correct question, asking something like, I don't know how these machines work, and I found it another way then, when had the first bank, the first modern bank, been established? Casa delle Copere di Banco di San Giorgio, 1407 in Genova. There are some important things with this. That's the banking bit. It is the time we are talking about, this period. It is, if you translate it, the house of shops and banks. Shops and banks. It's about trade. And again, do some research. Never take things first face value. There is something you cannot see here. If you are in the place, and if you go a little bit further, see from you to the right, you will arrive at the open sea. Genova in those years had been what we would call today an international trade hub. There were exchanges that had been going much further than the usual borders as we know them from our small scale at the stage city-states. Kind of internationalization at that time meant you went to the next city or something like this, but it was here really international trade. I included the Amsterdam Bank from 1690, which was much later. The reason for it was that this is usually linked to the first stock market. So you see as well the Vista Bank is an exchange bank, and you may have heard it in finance. There is a certain document that guarantees basically that I will pay you this money at a later stage. So exchange bank, exchange bank, Vista Bank, it's not a proper translation. But this happened again at that time. Is part of this overall BCC program is something that happened as well those years. Luca Pacchion, 1494. First, of course. I talked about international outreach. This was usually connected with Christophorus Columbus. who is as well from Genova. This is his map. He did a very stupid thing, but still he is celebrated for it today. He discovered America because he thought he would go to India. A tiny difference of half around the globe. And to say discover India, discover America is a little bit whitewashing. It was not really about discovering, but it was about conquering. When you are studying, be aware of the terms you are using and exactly what you are talking about. Anyway, this was the time where people did not think anymore, I'm simplifying a little bit now, where people reached out and had been confident of not falling down at the other end of the earth. There was this image at some stage, it's contested if it really existed, but the world is flat. And if you go too far, you'll just fall down. There had been other people going to America before Columbus, but what really is important was not so much that he conquered America, but actually that he conquered America. This is the important part. It had been discovered before, but he established the first institutionalized relationships which have been mined not just about trade, but especially about slave trade. This is what happened there, meaning getting Europe involved in international trade and getting them involved in slave trade as well. It wasn't all good in Europe before they did this. They had their own means of oppression, but it was a very important thing. There was something else happening during this time, and now I come to Pacioli. And as I said, this is part of the BCC program as well. Perhaps you have an idea what this is. It's a leisure accounting book. It's accounting. And I can remain in this harsh and brute way of thinking. You had to know how many slaves you owned. You had to do your bookkeeping. And it was the idea of a developing new economic system, as I said earlier, this new economic system of, we would say today, finance capitalism. So what we find today is not really new in some way. It was finance capitalism. It was not the late industrial capitalism. They managed, in one way or another, to do without production. The production was, of course, important and in the backyard, but the entire system was based on rich people managed full, who had been spread over the world and having their banks, as I showed you before, and who then did this bookkeeping. It was a very systematic way of accounting, which made it possible to establish proper comparisons of what are you doing, how much do I owe you. It was not the over-the-thumb rule, which always has the over-the-thumb up and down, which is or had been a matter of power, of violence. This still was the case, but here it was now about accounting and properly drawing up books and making these calculations. As I said, all this is part of a wide story, and you cannot simply say this is the one thing and this is sufficient. You have to look at the overall picture. And another element of this had been the invention, if you want, of the printing press. 1014, this happened in China. Then later, 13-something, it happened in Korea. And 1415, it happened in Germany, which meant removable letters. Before, if you wanted to copy a book, you employed many people, and they had been writing it, copying it literally. And believe me, everybody knew exactly what they had been reading after they finished the book. Excellent learning tool. But at the same time, of course, the spread of this information had been very, very limited, because producing such a book took a long time. It was very limited. The books had been very expensive. This printing press was a great invention in this respect that it allowed to put letters into, if you want, a box, build the words, and you could use this for printing many copies. It was relatively cheap and fast, which meant information could, if you want to use a kind of metaphor, could go around the world as fast as people could go around the world. In a way, we cannot really imagine this today. Because for us, books are kind of normal, standard, everyday tool. At the same time, I'm kind of hesitating to say this because today, if you go to a library, in some libraries you do not find books anymore, you find computer lists. And you have to work on the computer. You do not go to the shelf and pick your journals, but you look up on the internet and you get your journals by the internet. There are advantages, there are disadvantages, I don't want to talk about this, but it means that we are in a way facing such a fundamental change today again. If you look back, as I said, information had been spread around the world as fast as people had been going around the world. Those times we had been dealing with ships and with horse carts. Today we have aircrafts that bring us within painful 20-25 hours or something from Europe to China. But it's still less painful than a horse cart and much faster. We have this information, and this is something deceiving as well. Information, a fax machine is not very common anymore. This had been about 20 years ago or something, which allowed to transfer information more or less immediately to another place via telephone. Today we have internet, it's a common everyday tool. There is another thing that is of crucial importance for this time, and that is linked to all this what was going on. And this is the Reformation. In a way, this was a protest going on in the church, meaning you have had up to then the Catholic Church as the one church and the Pope as the one secular lawgiver. God from law handed down basically to the Pope, and the Pope was on this level the only one who could say something. Now, so far so good, but there was a guy somewhere else saying, this doesn't work. I believe in God, Martin Luther, Calvin, people like this. We are not against it, but we are against two things. The one is payment of indulgence, meaning if you sin, The Catholic Church said, if you sin, just give me money and you don't have to go to hell, or you don't have to stay so long in purgatory. The other thing was plenitudo potestatis, which meant that this new religion or this new interpretation said it is not the Pope that is decisive, but it is you. We hold, Martin Luther translated the Bible, and this is why I have this here. The German is not translated properly into the English version, King Charles Bible, but what he did, he translated it, there had been translations before, but he said, I use it in my interpretation as we would say in German. If you translate this into English, you find one decisive difference to the previous interpretation, and this is the word alone. It basically meant the Pope does not have any legal power. It is my faith and your faith that is deciding, and this means as well that there is a different interpretation possible. And this is exactly then in a different strand of philosophy coming up, that this is more the natural science side, that it was something that the Earth, that our planet is not the center. Which means as well, we are not the center. We are just going around about other planets and the sun, and we are not the center. This was a huge, decisive change on the one hand in terms of mental setting. It's not we that are the center of everything. It's not God that can say everything. And this is very important simply in terms of what I said before, Columbus, he miscalculated it, but they said now, with reference to the stars, we can calculate actually distance, and this allows us to travel. Now we can go into details and calculate how you get to Europe by looking at the stars, but this is the important point here that allowed us as well to think in a typical way. I mentioned it before in the economic crisis. It's the rational individual, self-responsible, and looking after him or herself, which is in philosophy, or it's a very peculiar translation of cogito ergo sum, meaning I am thinking, and this is why things exist. It's not the reality, and it's let alone a reality from outside, but it is me who is thinking, and this is the decisive thing. Try to think about it. Try to be open towards what is happening today, and try to think if you can imagine these things together in terms or as a matter of a change of history, a change of the entire historical setting. I can give you some pointers, not systematically, but that may inspire you. I don't know how many female students are here. Those years, there had been no female students. Those years, there had been no students if they did not study for the church. It's a kind of similar huge break in history. I don't know how many of you traveled already. I know that many have the opportunity to go to Bangor to study there, and that many probably just go to somewhere for holidays. It's still something not everybody can afford to do, without any doubt. But if you traveled in these times to the neighboring village, this was something. If we think about today, how many Chinese people are working somewhere abroad and how many people from abroad are working in China. Migration, there's a huge migration issue now in Europe on a different scale, in a different way. We see exactly as well this dimension of the borders we have had are changing. We do not have the wallpapers on beautiful palace rooms, but we have the wallpapers in our immediate surrounding, meaning in the shopping malls, telling us this is the way you have to think, and this is the way what you have to do. And I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say hesitant, but I'm frequently thinking about it, what it actually means, that we always have this discussion, today again, that you may say we have had that time, or this era. On the one hand, it's a painting from 1637 by Hunan, seaport. This going out, the harbour, was on the one hand a kind of place of security. You can go through many things in this painting. You see here the Villa de Medici, finance capital, and you see exactly this symbolized, we are reaching out. The spirit of the time. The zeitgeist, as I said last time. And at the same time, I talked as well to students, to the classmates, to some of them, what is all this about? It's so nice to be in a remote area, it's so nice to engage with nature, it's peaceful. Why all this hassle? Do we need all these big business and small business and running around and special office on the 11th of November in China and whatsoever? Why not just stay somewhere nice and enjoy what we can enjoy? It's this tension, as a kind of permanent tension, with a fundamental question, what is it about, and how can we actually establish something that is not just the old, the ancient legend, as we say, in the old system, but that is providing along something new. And there is a little bit a problem as well when we look at history. It looks in many cases also beautiful. If you look at the first bank, you don't have to like this building, but it's simply beautiful. All the paintings and stucco and all this. It's, in terms of arts, it's a masterpiece. If you like it or not, if you like the fresco in the Vatican, it's a masterpiece, it's a piece of arts. We still find this today, but this is, on the other hand, modern straight lines and nothing. So we'll stop here.